Welcome to the Finding Purpose LiveCast, where we feature authors, leaders, and speakers of purpose on a live platform to have truly authentic conversations. And now your host, Davin Salvagno.
Welcome back to the Finding Purpose LiveCast. We have a treat for you today. We are in person at LCI Lippert Components in Indiana, and we have Jason Lippert with us today, and we have Dr. Amber Selking with us here today. And I tell you what, I'm jacked up because we have just spent the last hour repping about purpose in the workplace, purpose at work, leadership, healthy cultures, organizations that are truly making impact in people's lives. And I'm telling, listen, we talked to a lot of companies, but this is truly what good looks like, what you guys have going on here. So thank you so much for taking time out. And you guys are crazy busy right now. So thank you for taking time out of this moment where your industry is on fire to sit down and share with people who are listening today what you guys have going on.
Thanks a lot. I think that, first of all, I want to say thanks for doing this because a lot of companies need to hear more about what good culture looks like. And there's no better way to learn than through examples. So thanks.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. I mean, we talk all the time about there's very few entities, right, that exist in the world that have the potential for as much good as business, right? Because we all work. And, you know, we say a lot here that we want business to be a force for good in the world. And at LCI, we're trying to build something, so like Jason said, can be a model, you know, that people can look to and say, man, that can be done. And we think, no, why not LCI? Because people will say, oh, well, you can do that kind of stuff, right? Because you're a tech company. Yeah, well, this office is cool, but we're a manufacturing company. You know, we make stuff. We're one of the best American manufacturing companies in the world, right? And we're proud of that. And then, you know, or it's like, oh, well, you're private, so you can do stuff like that. Well, we're publicly traded, right? We got to figure out that dynamic too. And then I think the last argument I hear all the time is like, oh, you're regional. That's easy for a regional company. Well, no, we're not just in Northern Indiana. We're trying to figure out how to do this literally around the world. And, you know, for that reason, that gives us even more energy to want to tackle this thing of how do we make business a force for good in the world? Because we certainly believe that it can. And when people are treated well at work, they get to go home happier and healthier, treat their spouse better, they don't kick the dog, and they contribute more to their community. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about.
Davin, meet my VP of Culture.
Yeah, VP of Culture and Leadership. Woo! No, but I love that because I mean, you just sat there and you just shot down every excuse, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, because companies are like, yeah, we want to lead with purpose. We want to do this. We want to do this. But, and you're like, yep. Nope. We got to figure it out. I mean, we've said before in this live cast, circumstances don't define you, choices do. And you guys just continue to make choice after choice to say, how do we put purpose and people first? Yeah, we make components for RVs and boats and all this stuff, and that's great, right? But more important than any of that is who we're helping our people become and what we're shepherding them through and leading them through. And which brings us to this is your second appearance on the Finding Purpose LiveCast. And in the first one, we told your story and we told the story of LCI, but then a lot's happened since then. This second series we've entitled, And Then COVID Happened, right? And it seems like every sentence that here were our plans for 2020. Here's what we were going to do. And then COVID happened. But just like you just said, right? Yeah, COVID happened, but we still have to figure it out. We still got to keep moving forward. And you guys have done that. I mean, like you guys are exploding and you are stronger today than probably you were before COVID because of the incredible culture that you're fostering here, but because you continue to keep first things first and have that mindset. So talk to us about like what has happened in the last 6 months. COVID happened. Talk to us about that journey and where you're at.
Well, I'll start. I'll say that, you know, the tough times, whether you're talking about, you know, the 08-09 recession or in 9/11 or COVID, I mean, these are the times that really test, you know, how consistent and good your culture is, because this is the opportunity for you to shine or shrink back. And, you know, and so I feel like, we were prepared for this. I think it's helped that we've been on a culture journey for 8 years and taking a lot of steps over that time period, so that when these types of times hit, it's not like, okay, what do we do? It's more the same. We've got to live to our values. Our team members are going to expect that we do certain things, and we got to continue to serve them. And especially in a time that's as crazy as this, where everything was turned on its head. So, I'm proud of the way our teams reacted. going into COVID and not knowing, our industry stopped for about 6 weeks. There's no production, which is scary. I mean, even in 08, 09 and 9/11, other crises, we kept going, we kept producing, but it stopped. So, we didn't know what was going to happen. And as we came out of it and got everybody back working again, and to the point where we have 800 open positions right now. So we're not only back to where we were, we've got
800
in Elkhart County.
In Elkhart County.
Yeah, I don't know what we have
800. If you're looking for a job at a place with incredible culture,
come here.
800 positions open right now in Elkhart County.
Yeah. So the long and short is like, I think what we talked a lot about is what is our retention going to do through a period like this when, people are stressed out, they're anxious anyway. Thank God we had a good culture to begin with. So they're probably less so than other places, but when people are stressed out and anxious and they're not know what's going to happen, you just don't know how retention and turnover is going to end up. And it's been very consistent with what we were seeing prior to when things were wrong.
Yeah. And I think through that season, when I remember back in March, right, it was just one day, it's like the world's going dark and everything just shut down. And I've been at LCI for 2.5 years now, but this was sort of the first. I mean, these guys have been here for a long time and they've been through a lot of battles together, and so this was my first experience to go into battle with this senior leadership team. And I remember every day feeling like, let's put some freaking war paint on and go, right?
Yeah.
Like they are so committed to who we're going to be, what we're going to do, how we're going to take care of our people, what our plans are to come back for business. And so it was just this massively energizing time. And I remember I'd go home and I'd talk about it to my husband, to my friends. And finally somebody was like, Amber, can you just stop talking? Because I'm really happy that you're on a team that is handling COVID like this, but nobody else's is. Okay. And so we're all really struggling right now and we're happy for you, but we really don't want to hear it. And I was like, sucks to be you. Okay. I'll be in my own happy place. So I think that senior leadership, just the intentionality with which we attack hard things versus shy away from it was first and foremost a huge highlight for me through the initial seasons of COVID. And then, through COVID, we committed to our leaders at every facility committed to calling every single person on their team once a week through the entire shutdown to check in. How are you doing? How's your family doing? Is there anything that you're struggling with that we can help you with? We had a team member emergency fund that Jason helped spearhead that literally if people needed groceries, we were ordering groceries for team members so that they can pick them up at a local grocery store around the country, right? Like it needs for families that we were there to take care of them. And then just giving them information about what we were seeing in the landscape, what our current plan was, if we had any new information, because in the absence of communication, people make up their own story. And so we were able to just be really intentional through that season. And then when we turned the lights back on and fired things back up, I mean, it was just constant communication with our team members and figuring that out. And, again, we're not perfect. We don't claim to be. We made a lot of mistakes through that season as well. But we tried, and I think a lot of our team members appreciated that. And now on the other side of this, it's like the exact opposite of what we sort of thought was going to happen in March, right? Where the industry is booming and it's a whole other different burden that we're wrestling with now of trying to fill all these open positions, high demand. And so, just that continued care for our people as we navigate a really difficult season, very different, but also difficult season is pretty awesome.
That care is, I can't emphasize enough we all felt the rug get pulled. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. We all felt the rug get pulled out of us, right? We all felt alone for a second. And the one thing that united us, obviously, was that we were all in this together all of a sudden. But then to have a company that's saying, hey, listen, everything else aside, how are you doing? How's your family doing? What are you doing? That constant communication. I love that quote. In the absence of communication, people make up their own stories, right? So you had to continue to drive that narrative of, listen, you're an LCI family member. You matter, right? And we're all in this as a family. How can we help? How can we help? It's the greatest question we can ask as leaders. How can we help? Right? And that was so powerful. And then you said earlier, hey, listen, stop talking because it's great that you work at a place like that, but I don't work at a place like that. And and I'm sure there's some LCI people listening to this and going, I'm so glad I work at LCI, but there's thousands of people listening to this right now that go, okay, this is kind of annoying because I want to be there and I'm not in that place. Right? So what would you say to those people listening right now? Like, you know what? I'm not in that place. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And, maybe like I'm not the CEO of my company. I can't perpetuate that type of culture. So what can I do, or how can I affect change, or what, like for those that are still kind of in this spot of despair, right? And you were talking to me earlier about speaking life into a football player. That was an amazing story, right? What would you speak into the ears of those listening right now that are feeling the way?
At the end of the day, we don't have to be victims of our circumstance. I mean, we can either let the circumstances change us, or we can impact our circumstance. And I think that as human beings, we far too often relinquish the power that is inside of us to take personal responsibility over how we show up every day. And for me, my background's in human performance psychology, and I believe that starts with how we think. And, while we can't always control the thoughts that come into our head, and we certainly can't always control the circumstances in which we find ourselves, we can control if we choose to hold on to those thoughts that come into our head, and we can control what we choose to think about the circumstances that are in front of us. So, everybody on this call has probably heard of PTSD, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder. And people come back from war, and right after World War II, we had so many people come back that were just shell-shocked, right? That was the term that initially was used, and then we started calling it PTSD. But there's actually another side of that my roommate in grad school, she did all of her research on. It's called post-traumatic growth. And they've actually found that there's statistically higher people that come out of traumatic situations and actually grow through it versus those that come out of it and have stress disorder. And so I think as a whole society, we need to just reframe and start thinking about and talking about the good side of all of the challenges that we face and not just the negative, because what we think about grows in our mind, and post-traumatic growth is a real thing. And we've got a lot of people who went through a lot of trauma through this COVID season, at all different age gaps in our world. And so it really comes down to, how are we going to think about these challenges that we've gone through? Are we going to allow those to grow us, to find new levels of resilience and grit and courage within us? Or are we going to be victims of that and allow everything to happen to us? And so I would just encourage everybody that regardless of where you are and what circumstance you're in, control the controllables. What are the things that are within your control? Direct your attention to those, and then just put your energy toward it as well, because action generates traction.
And I would say that, most people know of good companies around them. It's just, there's just a lot of fear, and it's the hard choice for people to make, is to go, leave something that you might be in for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years. It's hard for people to leave because there is a lot of familiarity there. They at least know what to expect. So I think for that reason, it's hard for people to get up and walk away from something they've been involved with for a long time, even if it's like, mentally abusive in terms of the culture and just not what it could be. And some cultures are just tolerable. Other cultures are terrible, but there's cultures out there that are great and people thrive. And that's where people probably grow more than not, is in a culture that's committed to develop their team members and put them in a place where it's, caring and trust and all the things that are important when it comes to, keeping and maintaining a thriving, good culture. So, I would say, hey, look, it's a hard decision for people to make if you're in a company that has maybe an average or below average culture, but it's on the person to step up and try to get out of it, because there are companies out there that are trying to do a lot of good things. They're trying to improve culture. I just left here before I came in here and went to meet 2 team members that are brand new to the company. Came from another peer in the industry that was there for 5 years. The other one there was for 23 years. And I asked them both the question, why did you come over here? And, one of them was very vocal and said the culture was terrible. I mean, they have the values on the wall, and it just bothered me that they did everything that was the opposite of that every day. And I just couldn't take it anymore. The other one it was a trust issue. Hey, I've asked 100 different things for things to be done, and they said they get them done, and they just wouldn't do it. And eventually, people, they break down and they say, okay, I can't do it anymore. But for a lot of people, they just stay in it until there's a situation like that where it forces them out. And it shouldn't be like that. If you're not being developed and you're not in a culture where it's healthy, then you should go try to find one that is.
That's so good. And as a leader too, like you're the CEO of the company, and that's a lot of people are like, yeah, great, you're the CEO, but it's a publicly traded $3 billion company with 11,000 employees in hyper growth mode in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of a pandemic. And so it's like, hey, that all sounds great, but we have like all the stuff we have to deal with. And what's amazing to me is you're like even more calm, cool, collected right now than you were on our previous episode months ago, and in the middle of an even greater storm. So talk to maybe, like, I love, Amber, you did a great job of speaking to the people who are like, yeah, I don't resonate with that. And that was solid advice. Like, control what you can control. Again, circumstances don't define you, choices do. What would you say to the leaders that are listening to this that have the responsibility to fix the cultures, to actually create the environment and to do something about it and say, you know what, forget the excuses, forget the yeah buts. This is what we need to focus on right now, despite the growing pressures that we have, despite the shareholders we have to report to, despite all of that. This is what matters most now.
Well, for if you're a leader and you're in a position where, you're just kind of going with the flow, and you want a better culture, just know that the people, that you're responsible for in your span of care, they're not going to grow unless you develop them and coach them. And that's what a lot of leaders miss. They get to a position and they do whatever they saw their predecessor do, and in a lot of cases, those, whether it's in, the front lines of manufacturing, whether it's executive leadership someplace, they just not a lot of good examples. A lot of this leadership and culture stuff is new. Matter of fact, when I had this conversation I was just telling you about with the 5-year new team member for us, it's one of the first times I can remember anybody I've ever talked to, either during the interview process or after, say I left because of culture. I mean, just a lot of people don't say that. Culture and leadership, models are newer today than what it was when nobody talked about culture when I came to work. So I think that, it's on these leaders to really make a decision, put their dig their heels in the ground and say, I'm going to develop my people first. I'm going to serve my people. And as they grow, the culture will get better.
That's right.
If they exhibit a model of servant leadership to their team and just, sacrifice themselves to grow their team and coach their team up, they'll stay longer. They'll get more ideas, they'll get more passion and energy to their team. And that should, that has the potential of going, organization wide. I mean, it's tough when you have somebody at the top that doesn't buy into that and that backdoors it, but they can't be everywhere at once. So what I tell those people in those companies is that, you might have, you might get barraged every once in a while with, stuff that's counter to what you want to create, but it's not going to be every day. And if it is, that's when you should take off and do something else.
That's right.
I will add 2 things to that. I think one reason why we've continued to be successful at this at LCI is because of this guy. I mean, he has a relentless, maniacal belief that this is what we're going to do. And he doesn't do excuses well. Even if there's reasons of why we might not be doing something, he'll literally look at me and say, I don't care. Fix it. Make it happen. And then you're like, okay. And then the crazy thing is we do. And that is another thing that, like, it's just that this leadership that has this belief in people that, like, no, we can do this. It's okay to do this. No, we can solve this problem. And before long, you're solving problems and doing things that you thought were impossible. And every great leader that I've been around, like Jason, has had that just visionary pursuit of excellence that challenges people to rise up and figure it out. And when you do, you're left with this, oh my gosh, we can do this. And slow, little by little, that trickles throughout an organization that, wow, we can do anything, and it's incredible to be a part of from that perspective. And then, I also think to some CEOs that just don't get it at the heart and mind level that Jason does, if you don't get it from that perspective, like at least get it from the performance standpoint, right? Like if you care about performance, you're going to have to start caring about leadership and culture, because our society is changing. Like how people think about work and how they think about their own lives and the purpose of life is shifting. I mean, by and large, from a generational perspective. And so if you really care about high performance and running a great business, then you better start putting this in your scope of reference, or you're going to get left behind and people are going to be leaving you. So whether you get it or whether you just want high performance, like don't talk to me about high performance if you don't want to put this in your scope of reference.
So good. So good. We've talked about it before. Like if I had a whiteboard, I would draw it right here. So many companies either want to focus from a performance standpoint, like how do we get people to perform better? How do we get them to perform higher, faster, more efficient? And then a lot of leaders want to talk about potential. How do we unleash the potential within our organization, all of that. And so you kind of have this XY axis. And what they're forgetting is that right here in the top corner of the right quadrant is purpose. And if you lead your people towards purpose, if that's the glue that is holding your culture together and that people are striving for, the natural byproduct of that is that performance and potential will both increase. And that's the piece so many companies are missing, is they're trying to drive performance, or they're trying to unlock and unleash potential. And the way to do that is to not really focus on either of those. It's to focus on driving your people towards purpose, and the byproduct will be higher performance and unlocked potential.
Yeah. How can you get peak performance or optimal performance when, the individuals on the team aren't all in? Right. So to me, it's like, I sit in front of our frontline leaders once a week at different facilities, and, our very first line of manufacturing, kind of like I was telling you, our leaders there, like I was telling you the last time we were together. And, the question I've been asking recently is who's all in? Who's going to be here until they retire? And not every hand goes up, but that's an easy litmus test for me to understand, are you all in or not? Because if you're all in, you're probably going to be here. You're probably going to raise your hand. You're going to be here till you retire. But, so my question to the team, not to make the people that didn't raise their hand feel, bad or anything like that, but it's like, it's just to show people that not everybody is all in, and you're not going to get to optimal performance until everybody is all in. And if they're not all in, you've got to play the courage piece on our leadership values, and to say, hey, look, have the courage and just say, hey, look, why? What is it? What are we not doing? Is it the business position? Is it the hours? Is it the location? Is it your leader? What is it? Let's fix it. And if we can fix those issues and get them to where they're raising their hand and saying, I'm going to retire here because I love it here, and I'm going to come to work with my hair on fire every day for this company and my team, then that's when you get the performance shooting up.
That's right.
Get all their passion, not just their presence.
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about places of culture that we want to retire from, and culture has become a buzzword. We've probably said it. If we're checking the boxes off, we've probably said it 100 times already on this live cast. And a lot of times companies think that what culture is the building, right? Like I walk in here, and this is an amazing place. I wish the people that are listening to this could see this, because it's unreal. I mean, like the details of the light fixtures and the blues and the wood walls and the open spaces and glass fishbowl concept and the technology. I mean, it's amazing, but the reality is there's nobody here right now.
Right.
And so if your culture is tied up in coffee stations, beanbag chairs, fancy technology, and all of that stuff, do you think that's culture? Hey, we want to attract the next generation because we've created this great, cool, open concept to work. That's not culture. Right. Culture, if COVID has taught us anything, it's told us that while this is great and it's awesome, for 6 months your team has been working remotely, and they have performed at an incredible level because it wasn't tied to the building. It was tied to the purpose of the company and the purpose that each one of them are here for and contributing to, and saying, hey, I'm all in, you can count on me.
Right. With a foundation of connection, relationships, and trust. And if you have those things, you can start to do all the other stuff and build a mountain on top of that foundation. But if you don't have that, if you just have the building, and and I think that most people, if you asked them you name a company with great culture, they'd say Google or Apple, because they think of the beanbags and the open concepts and the cool, all the glass and everything. But at the end of the day, you're right. You don't have any of that if you don't have the relationships and the trust and the connection with the people, which is what got us through COVID. Because people weren't saying, well, I don't know my leader really well. I don't know if they'll tell me the truth. They know him, and they're getting calls once a week. And, our company, as you know, is, 10,000 of those 11,000 are on the front lines of our business making stuff. So, it's these, frontline leaders that run a manufacturing selling our pants. They're the ones making those phone calls to the frontline team member that's making part of a window or part of a jack or part of a chassis.
And this building is awesome, and we do have some people working from home, but a main reason why it's empty is because our culture isn't in this building. Our culture is with our people. Right. And so like we pop in here to shoot some emails off and do a little bit of work, and then it's like we're running back out to our plants and around all of the places. And so a big reason why this place is empty is because all of our leaders are out in the business, with our people and doing it outside of that. So it is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I just came screaming in the building
Literally.
from talking to, 50 of our people at one of our, facilities over in Elkhart. So that's what keeps the culture moving is.
Yeah.
Talk to me about time. Take the time excuse away. I just love how you're shooting down excuse after excuse, because here's the thing. It's like you have 10,000 people on the front lines making stuff in an industry where demand is high, things are exploding, and you're like, you know what? But we're taking the time to call our people. Right. We're taking the time to coach our people, right? I mean, there's one thing to just say, hey, are you okay? There's another thing to say, you know what? Okay, hold on, stop the press. Let's talk about this. What's going on? Let's have the conversation. Let's actually coach them. And the biggest thing that gets in the way of most companies actually having a good culture, the biggest thing is that they constantly make the excuse and say, we don't have time. We have deadlines. We have this. We're busy. We're busy. Everyone's busy. You talk to anybody, I'm busy, right? How have you guys dominated the time excuse game?
It's priorities. So, we all have a list of things we can do to fill our day. And at the end of the day, it's, what are you making a priority? And if you're not making, culture and leadership and relationships and building trust and connections a priority, it's not obviously going to get done. So for me, when we went through this, when we started on our culture journey, one of the things I did was I looked at all the things I was doing and said, this is what fills up my day. I'm not like a slouch. I'm still working a lot of hours and busy and don't have like big, intervals between meetings and things like that. So what am I going to peel off? And, what I found peeling off in my schedule was, I dealt with a lot of customers but I built relationships with these customers over the last 20 years. So making that extra phone call or thinking that I'm building the relationship and, developing the relationship more, and that's better for the business. Do I do that, or do I go spend it with our facilities and our people? So I took some of that stuff away, and we've asked our team members to do the same thing. If you're going to make time to do this, and you have to make time, because our leadership development and culture resources are great. They're going to help, stoke the fire and keep the momentum rolling faster and faster. But they can't be everywhere at once. Right. There's, a handful of them, and we've got 90 facilities. So every team at every facility needs to be, a culture leader, leadership development. They need to be doing all that stuff. So what are you going to take away? And you're going to have to take away something. What are you going to stop doing to make time for it? That's what I think was the larger answer to your question.
And I think on a more specific level, it's exactly true. And that's why it continues to live and breathe, is because he demands it. And we all understand that that's a priority. In the midst of COVID, our leadership development team, we had a daily 15-minute call to just touch base on new information, because everything was changing every 30 minutes. So at least if we started off in the morning, we'd have a general baseline. But we also had, weekly longer Zoom calls to talk about, hey, how are we going to continue development and culture through this season? And one of our leadership development directors brought this concept in an article that she had read from Harvard Business Review on, pivoting or pausing, and what are companies going to choose to do through the midst of this? Are they going to pause and say, okay, let's see how this plays out, and then we'll resume? Or are they going to pivot? And I think that LCI is like the master of the pivot of everything, including culture. And so, whereas we used to have the luxury of bringing our team members off the floor for an hour to sit down and talk about leadership and do culture and interactive in conversations, that's not feasible anymore from a demand standpoint, from a COVID safety standpoint. And so we pivoted, and we did a lot of short videos. We did a lot of just on the floor walkthroughs, small groups, stand-up meetings, anywhere you can inject this, coaching our leaders to make sure they're having these conversations, because like Jason said, at the end of the day, leadership development best happens to and through the leader, not to and through the leadership development person, and so, we had to find ways to pivot to make that live and breathe throughout the course of this.
And the other way to do it is to create a resource for people. Yeah. So again, Amber and her team of 15 plus, we created that resource for our people. So, they're getting it from their leaders, hopefully. They're getting leadership development and training and all that good stuff from their leaders at their facilities, but they're also getting it from her team. And most companies don't have a team of people focused on leadership development and culture development and things like that. So if you don't create the resource there and put the money into it, then it's not going to happen as full as what it would if you do create a resource that's their only job.
And again, it doesn't matter how big or small you are. Yesterday, so we have the Lippert Academy for Leadership, which literally is an external consulting arm of our organization that comes alongside of other companies and organizations who are interested in either beginning their leadership and cultural journey or continuing it. And we kicked off yesterday with a small manufacturing company in Argos, Indiana, American Engineering Trailers, and they're a team of maybe 25 people, and they have a leadership and culture person. And her main job is to figure out how do we make our team members' lives better. And like they started there, which is so amazing. Yeah. Usually like we coach people to get to that point, and that's because they believe so deeply in that. And so I love seeing that commitment to it. And it's exciting to come alongside of them. And again, it doesn't matter what size you are, because that's an excuse too. We're too
There's
small.
Always a next step.
Yeah.
That's that's what the Academy's there for, just help companies take the next step in their culture journey.
That has been from our first conversation, you shared that about Lippert Academy. That was such a refreshing aha, because here you are, and obviously you make components for RVs and for boats and for a whole bunch of stuff. And I've often said that the greatest product that any company can produce is its culture, right? It's not what comes off the assembly line. And here, you guys created that, and then your customers that you're interfacing with every day are saying, how are you guys, like, what is in the water at LCI? Like, what is going on there? And you're like, well, listen, you think that our greatest product is the pieces that we make? No. Our greatest product is our leadership and our culture, and we can help you create that too. And so then all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's pivot and create this academy to help our customers become who they're capable of. Let's focus them on purpose and help them drive performance and help unleash their potential by helping them through this academy that we've created. And so, it's awesome that you actually have your whole product line, but talk to me more about the dynamics of that academy and kind of like where that's at right now in the midst of this. Because again, there's a lot of companies that are probably making a lot of excuses. They're like, oh, we signed up for the academy 6 months ago, but then COVID happened. Right. So how are you shepherding them through this time?
Well, from my perspective, I mean, I'm connected to a lot of business leaders around here. So largely it happens to our connections, and it might be supplier peers, it might be customers, it might be some of our suppliers, or just businesses around the area that have heard what we're doing, or they've lost people to us, and they're trying to figure out why. So we created this resource because we just realized that our impact is going to be great with 11,000 team members and the 50,000 family members that we indirectly take care of, but our impact can be way greater if we're helping other businesses start. And most of the businesses we work with, they're trying to figure out the first step. They don't have values. They've not gone through the values journey. They've not gone through anything really, and we're just helping them take their first step with their entire leadership team, not the owner of the business or the CEO of the business. We're working with their whole leadership team, and we get people that want to buy in. To start, we don't get people to say, "Hey, talk to us about it," or try to convince my boss. They're coming to us and say, "We're in. We just need to know how to get started." And we just say, "Hey, look, we'll show you the first step, and then as soon as you get taken enough steps where you see, you just see what the next step's going to be on your own, then we kind of just let them go." And it's we've worked with over 30 companies so far in the last couple of years. I think we started in January 2018 was when we launched the academy.
Soft launch, hard launch in 2019.
Yep. So. And we didn't plan on starting it. We just had companies come to us saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then we saw how great our impact could be. And that I think is one of the most exciting things that's going on in our company is that we can get all these plates spinning, these great cultures starting and develop momentum in all these businesses around our community, and hopefully that extends past our community. And if some of those get an audacious goal to start their own leadership academy and help other companies, and how great would that be? That's kind of
I mean, the long-term vision, right, is that we want Northern Indiana to be the place where people want to go to see a bunch of companies doing leadership and culture really, really well. and that it can be this consortium of every company has their own leadership development person. And a lot of times in these roles, you're on an island. We're blessed to have a team. But for that to be a source that people can go to for resources, to get energized, to sit around and have a conversation with like-minded people so that you can get refilled back up to go fight the good fight, and I think that that's what we're looking forward to, that the RV industry, particularly in Elkhart County, which is a lot of RV, right, is transformed and becomes a beacon of like, man, that can be done, and let's go up there to see what's happening. I mean, last year we had a group from South Africa. They came to the U.S. and did a tour of the San Francisco 49ers, I think the Denver Police, a company up in Wisconsin, a Bob Chapman company, and then LCI and Coca-Cola company. And we were on that list that they came to see how was leadership and culture done well in an environment. And so, to again, sit around with like-minded people from South Africa who are doing this in their manufacturing company, a Coke bottling company down there, it was just invigorating, and I love the CEO. He was there and we were walking out of the conference room in one of our manufacturing plant and he goes, I just love the chair I sat in had a rip in it. He's like, this is culture. This is real, and that's, I think that you can't fabricate culture. Like, human beings are human beings and we're designed for connection, right? Human interaction. And so we don't make programs to have these cute programs. Like, we make programs or do things to connect human beings to human beings and draw them closer and get them more excited about this thing inside of them that is just wanting to come out and be expressed in this world.
You speak so genuinely and authentically about how passionate you are about that. And I know in your first episode, I kind of asked you, I said, well, like, why is that important to you? Right? I mean, you hit $1 billion. Why not just keep going?
Right off into the sunset.
And you said it was a momentous challenge for you at that, because you realized all of a sudden, well, now we're just kind of a smaller fish in a much bigger pond. Because what's next? 2 million, 3 million, 5 million out of 100 billion? Right. Like, when does it stop? Right. And so it becomes this perpetual, moving target of success that may not have significance. Right. And all of a sudden you said, well, wait a minute. You said this earlier, right? Like, we were aiming at the wrong basket. Oh my gosh, you got to tell that story. So we'll tell that in a second. But like, why is that important to you? I know why it's important to you, because you shared that episode 1. And if you want to reiterate on that, you can. But why is that important to you? Why not just be like, hey, I'm the VP of Leadership and Culture. We got this amazing thing. We are blowing profitability, performance, growth. We're hiring 800 people. We are rocking it out of the park. All this stuff we've been talking about for 35 minutes is fluff. Why not just focus on the performance and the profitability? Why is everything you're talking about so important to you? Why are you passionate about it?
I mean, I believe that human beings are created to live a life of greatness, whatever that looks like, in whatever role that you're fulfilling, wherever you're at in the world. And I think that, my deepest passion and purpose is to help build systems that allow human beings to flourish within them. My gifting is not one to come alongside people and to disciple people for a long period of time. That's not how God has wired me. But I want that, and I want systems that give people that opportunity, because I've been discipled and loved in that way and have grown through that process. But I believe that we can construct systems and teams and organizations in a way that allow people to learn who they've been created to be, and then calls them out of their current state and calls them up to their next state. And that's a phrase one of our leadership development directors uses all the time. And so, for me, like, I'm at LCI because of that. I think that, in biblical times, right, Mount Zion is the highest point in Jerusalem. And basically anywhere you stand in Jerusalem, if you look up, you can see Mount Zion. And it's supposed to be like a reminder that God is good and he's present and there's greatness there. And, the more I thought about it, I was like, that's why I want to be at LCI, because I think we can build something like a Mount Zion where people can look to and say, like, man, that's how you can do goodness and greatness. And at the end of the day, for me, that leads to people to a relationship with Christ. But, wherever people are at on their journey, we can help them learn and grow and lean into that. So that's why I do what I do and run around with my hair on fire with him.
That's right. And
so good.
If you're always chasing a top line target, you could argue that you'll never hit the goal, because there'll always be a next target to hit, right? So, that's part of, when we talk in episode 1 about that. It's like, so what is the true purpose? Well, it's to help people find their purpose and calling. Call that out of them at work, because guess what? Most, 88% of people in this country feel like they work for a company that doesn't care for them. So most people have never been, nobody's ever been pulled aside at work and said, hey, look, we're going to figure out what your purpose and calling is. We're going to figure out how you can inspire and impact, transform people's lives around you, because that is part of your purpose. I mean, that doesn't happen. So, but that's what we're doing. And that's part of, what we've decided. It's not the goal. It's not the next 10 or $100 million goal or $1 billion goal. It's take the people we have, help them to, realize that they can have impact and they can inspire other people and transform lives around them, which is ultimately has a ripple effect in our communities and ultimately our country if we get this going, big enough. So, that's what we're trying to help. And most people haven't connected those dots because business hasn't told them to connect those dots. They told them to get to the next monetary goal or the next financial metric goal, That's right.
And I think, Sean Akers done some great work around the science of happiness, right? And he talks about if you're always waiting for to do something to be happy, you're never really going to be happy, right? Like you have to be happy first. And so, we talk a lot about how I think our society, we've been conditioned to think that you have to do something so that you can get something so that you can be somebody. Right. And really the inverse is true. Like you have to be somebody, and based on who you are is going to drive what you do. Right. And then based on what you do, you're going to get a lot of cool stuff if you do it the right way. And so, we just try to challenge our team members to flip that equation, to understand, like, it's not about doing to get to be, it's about being to do to get. I mean, our sales, I'm writing right now on our sales team, and, we've went through a whole identity session with them last year on, our core values. These are organizational core values, but then the sales team wrote their purpose statement, and it's to serve, to embody, and to fuel our company. And then the sales DNA, and it literally says who we will be drives what we'll do. And so they want to be humble, relentless, passionate, and courageous. And based on that, it's going to drive them to collaborate, to win, to take extreme ownership, to build meaningful relationships, and to deliver innovative and effective solutions. And then, customer service revolution, we use the always never framework. And then that means we're going to always do these things and we're never going to do these things. And so that's the model we have to follow. And when you do that, it's amazing how much monetary profit you can get, how many numbers you can hit, how much happiness you can find, right? But really that's where you start, and it's a game changer.
That was so powerful. You said something a few moments ago. You said that's why you're running around with your hair on fire next to this guy. I want to challenge you. You guys aren't running around with your hair on fire. You guys are running around with your hearts on fire. Sure. And it is contagious. Sure.
We just both have nice hair, so we like
no,
I'm going to use that. That's really good.
That is really good, though.
That's what's going on. And that's igniting other hearts, which is igniting other hearts. That's the fuel.
I know,
it's such a great, think about like the paradigm shift, right? Yeah. There's a lot of companies that are running around with their hair on fire. And what is that sentence? Yeah. I mean, that means what? Stress, anxiety, craziness. No one wants to work in that type of environment. But then here, you guys are running around with your hearts on fire. And that's what good looks like. You know what I'm saying? That's a good illustration. You got to tell this before we wrap up here in a little bit. That's a good illustration of aiming at the right basket versus the wrong basket, right? Are you shooting at the basket with your hair on fire, or are you shooting at the basket with your heart on fire? Tell that story, like pre this, before we even jumped into this live cast. Tell that basket story, because that's awesome.
Yeah. So remember last fall, Frank Wright came up and was the keynote speaker at our Northern Indiana prayer breakfast. And, he was telling a story about how in high school he was a basketball player, and he was pretty good. And he was really excited one night because he was going to have a great game. His girlfriend was sitting on the front bench. And so he goes up for the ball, grabs the ball, turns around, runs down the court, makes a layup, and turns around and everybody's looking at him. And he's like, why aren't you all cheering? And he was so distracted by his beautiful girlfriend in the front that he forgot that he had grabbed an offensive rebound and then proceeded to go to the other end of the court and score for the opposing team. So they put the points on the board for the other team. And he said, think about our society today. We've got a lot of people that are shooting at the wrong basket, and they're giving points away to the enemy because they don't recognize the game that they're playing. And just like I could have pled my case with that ref and said, yeah, but sir, I made the basket, we should get the points. I didn't create the game of basketball, which means I didn't make the rules, so I don't get to dictate it. And he's like, I didn't make the game of life. Somebody else did. And there's a set of rules to it. And if you shoot at the wrong basket, the enemy's going to get the points. And we need to be around people that can hold us accountable and call out, hey, don't run that way. You're shooting at the wrong basket. And, that's again, the honor and privilege of being here on this team is, we hold each other accountable to the standards that we've set, the core values that we have, how we're trying to live our lives, who we're trying to be. And it's done in love, but it's done pretty directly. And it's special to be a part of.
There's probably there's leaders listening to this right now. They're like, oh my gosh, finally they talked about accountability after 45 minutes. Where is that? But here's the thing. We get accountability so wrong because people think that you don't hold someone else accountable the way the companies talk about holding someone else accountable, like holding their foot to the flame, right? If you look at accountability, what accountability truly means is, hey, you can count on me, right? That's what accountability is. I got your back, right? You can count on me. And so that's what healthy accountability looks like. And that's where teams and cultures flourish. And what you have created here is an environment of people who are saying, you know what? I'm all in. You can count on me, right? And you know what? If you're shooting at the wrong basket, I'm going to tell you because I don't want the enemy to win, right? You can count on me. And that's a healthy accountability. And that's you said, here's the things we're always going to do. Here's the things we're never going to do. And you guys hold each other accountable that in a way and say, listen, I am going to make sure that you're always aiming at the right basket.
Yeah, it's all this talk about culture and leadership and the models and the philosophy, it makes sense to a lot of people. People don't have a hard time understanding what we're talking about. The issue is that accountability issue. It's like, how do you make it work? And accountability is the key in doing accountability the right way. Because, someone doesn't do it, you scream and yell at them. I mean, you not only have ruined that person, you've scared everybody else in the organization, on the team that say, they're just going to get afraid and paralyzed to do anything. So, it's a respectful way to approach accountability and the respect in the process and making sure that, consistency is there. Because if you're not consistent with how you roll out culture and how you hold people accountable in a healthy culture, it doesn't work. You can almost count that if you're inconsistent, not very often, but often enough, people are going to stop believing in what you wrote on the walls or what you talk about. That happens everywhere.
Another one of our LDs says all the time, when you're communicating with people, if you give them too much love, it enables them. Or if you give them too much grace, it enables them. But if you give them too much truth, it can, cut them out of the circle almost. And so great communication is this intersection
Balance
of
between the
truth and grace. And that's just when you're thinking about accountability, and having those conversations. To your point, accountability is doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it the way you're supposed to do it. And we have accountability conversations. It's just calling people back to in that intersection of truth.
With that understanding, like you said, that everybody's got each other's back.
Yep.
Right? If people don't believe that, then, again, you can do all the talking and, meetings on values and culture and, hey, here's what we're going to do. But you got to have all that to make it work.
So good. So good. Well, as we wrap up, we're in the final moments of our time together. What is something that you want to share once for each of you? For those listening today that are saying, you know what, man, we've been shooting at the wrong basket. We need to turn some things around. You know what? Hey, this has been a long season of struggle. We've been on the struggle bus. And we need to turn things around. So for those listening today, what's some final things that you want to say to those?
Well, I'll start because I've got something that just is on my heart to say. But it's like a lot of people want a good culture for their business and their teams. But they're just afraid to make that move. They're afraid to, I'm like, my question is, what are you waiting for? Because, you've got your career is, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever. You don't want to wait till the last couple of years to get the courage to actually act and see how great, your 40, 50 hours a week can be. But it's going to, people tend in the business world to shrink back and not put their neck on the line, not speak out for what's right, for fear that they'll lose their job, for fear that they'll look, bad in the presence of their team or whatever the case is. But, it is so so refreshing and such an unbelievable life you can have in your 40, 50 hours a week if you lean in, do what's right, stand up for a good culture, and try to bring that good culture for wherever you're at. Maybe you're not going to leave and go to a company with a great culture. Maybe your choice is just to stay where you're at and make it the best it can be. But to do that, you're going to have to make some hard choices. You're going to have to do the hard things. Leadership is a series of decisions and choices and actions that are hard. None of that's easy. None of it's easy. There's no easy decisions around making culture great or leadership in your company great. So you got to lean into the hard stuff, and you got to, do it today. Don't wait. That's what I'd say.
I love it.
Awesome.
I just say, I think it's for freedom's sake that we've been set free, right? And I think so many people live in such bondage, right? And so scared to do or to be who they want to be, or what they actually believe in their gut and their heart is right. And so, to Jason's point, I would just encourage everybody, just take the next step. Yep. You say that all the time, just take the next step. You don't have to do it all at once tomorrow. And that's, the human brain is designed to protect us. And when you see this big thing that you have to do, it's overwhelming. But don't allow yourself to go there. Put it down into bite-sized pieces. The first time my husband goes, well, you know what they say about eating an elephant? And I was like, what?
Nope, I don't.
I don't. He's like, one bite at a time. I was like, oh, there you go. So he's my brain scientist. Yes. But that's it, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And culture and leadership is the same way. It's one bite at a time. Get a vision for what you want in your own life, first and foremost in your own life, and then in the team that you're a part of, because that vision can just be a North Star for you. And then, put it down into the next step, right? John Wooden always used to say, you need two things in life, a telescope and a microscope. A telescope so you can see the vision clearly, and a microscope to know what the next step is and the details in the moment. And I would just encourage you to be courageous enough to take that step, because in our world right now that is wrought with division and hatred and angst and anxiety and fear, we need more bridge builders, peace bringers, and light bearers. And we have the opportunity to be those people, but we have to be courageous enough to take a step.
So good. I am so grateful to be able to have spent this last hour with each of you. I am so fired up. I don't know how we're driving 3.5 hours back to Michigan. Someone on my team is going to have to drive because I'm not going to be able to focus.
Thanks so much for taking the drive.
Sir.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you for having us and taking time out of your guys' busy schedules and literally flying across town to make things happen and sharing.
With our hearts on fire.
With your hearts on fire. And sharing so much of yourself, with others who can just genuinely benefit from what it is that you guys are doing, for being that Zion, that light on the hill of this is what good looks like, not just in Elkhart County, but across the world, because you guys are making an impact across the world.
Just getting started.
Yeah.
Just getting started.
Thank you guys for the work that you do as well. Yeah. We're grateful to have met you, to know you, and to be, fighting the good fight. There's a lot of battle out there for us all to be together, and it's fun to partner with people that have a similar mindset and heart set. So thank you.
That's right. It's a fight worth fighting, and I'm glad that we can fight it together.
That's right.
You guys are awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of the Finding Purpose LiveCast here at LCI. And we hope that you continue to take these things and actually apply them. Don't leave this live cast and just go back and say, oh, that sounded great. Apply it to your life. Apply it to your companies. Take that step, as Amber said, to continue to press into your purpose of what you were created for and what your company was created for. Until next time on the Finding Purpose LiveCast, live purposefully.